Hello everyone. Today I'm going to show you one of my most favorite Bobby Fischer's games, and it was played in the Curaçao Candidates of 62. Of course, after the Stockholm Interzonal, in which Fischer finished in first place, he won the right to compete for the candidates at the candidates tournament, and 6 players from the Stockholm Interzonal competed to challenge Mikhail Botvinnik. And of course, one of the biggest favorites of the tournament was Petrosian, I would say, and Paul Keres as well. But Bobby Fischer was already considered a very dangerous opponent for the Russians, and in fact he did win the Interzonal, so everybody must have taken him seriously. He didn't have such a good start to the tournament. He lost round 1. He won round 2 against Filip, who was a Czechoslovakian grandmaster. So after in the few next rounds, he didn't have such a good score, draws and defeats, and this was round 7 against Paul Keres. And this game shows you that everything Nimzovich ever wrote is correct, and that you need to follow his rules. They opened with the Ruy Lopez, e4 by Bobby Fischer, of course, based by test, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5, a6, the main line, and they enter the closed Ruy Lopez with castles, bishop e7, rook to e1, b5, bishop to b3, d6, c3, castles, and h3. If you are unfamiliar with these opening moves, I can link the video in the description below. I have made a separate video on the theory of the Ruy Lopez, on the basics, and I have also made a detailed video on the variation you are about to see. And from this position on, after h3, they are in the closed Ruy Lopez, and here black chooses the variation. He could go for the Breyer with knight to b8, knight to a5, the Chigorin. He could play knight to d7, which is the Keres defense also. But in this position, Paul Keres didn't go for the defense that was named after him. They actually transposed to it. He started with the Chigorin with knight to a5. And now, the point of c3 that white played is that the bishop is going to retreat to c2. So Bobby Fischer plays that, and he is reinforcing the d4 break. And with knight to a5, black is simply trying to push c5 and then reroute the knight back to c6, and thus gain a big center. So after bishop to c2, the main moves actually do happen. c5, knight to d4, and now Paul Keres transposes to the Keres defense. If he doesn't, he can choose other moves. He can go for the main line Chigorin, but he chose knight to d7, which is now the Keres defense. And this position, by transposition, is supposed to be slightly better for white, but it's nothing major. And the main move in this line is knight b to d2. This is the main continuation, and this is probably what Paul Keres expected. However, Bobby Fischer must have known that he plays this move. It was named after Paul Keres much later, but even in 62, everybody must have known that Paul Keres plays this. So this was perhaps, avoiding this move, knight b to d2, was perhaps Fischer's way to avoid theory and to surprise Keres. So this variation would go like this. E takes d4, c takes d4, knight to c6, d5, knight c to e5. And here black is okay. I mean, there's nothing major in the position for white. Black has a few open lines. His bishops are okay, his knights are okay. He has a weakness on the d6 square, but white has a weakness on e4, so the position is balanced. However, after knight to d7, Bobby Fischer didn't go for this. He took on c5, and d takes c5 is a very rare move, which isn't that good for white either, and it's losing all the opening advantage. But it was definitely a surprise for Paul Keres. For example, the main move, knight b to d2, is played about 100 times more often than d takes c5. To this, Paul Keres reacted with d takes. Now we have knight b to d2, but the position is very different. You can see the center isn't closed. There are no pawns on d5 and on d6, which makes the position completely different. Now we have queen to c7, which is a common plan in the Chigorin and in the Keres, but perhaps not as good in this exact position. Knight to f1, and the common maneuver in many Ruy Lopez positions is knight from b1 to d2, d2 to f1, and then to g3, or to e3, controlling the f5 square and the d5 square. So from this position on, we have knight to b6, knight to e3, controlling the key outpost square on d5, and you can already see that even though you can see the engine evaluation on the right side of the board, but don't pay too much attention to it, even though you can see that the position is equal, strategically white has a big advantage here, because the d5 square is permanently weak, and this is now a permanent outpost for white's pieces, and there will always be a way to exploit that. Paul Keres continues with rook to d8, Queen to e2, of course the queen has to move. Bishop to e6, and this was the first mistake. This was the first big mistake by Paul Keres. The problem with this position is that white wants to play knight to d5. That's very much obvious. And in order to be able to stop that, black will have to do something about this pawn, because this pawn is attacked 3 times. So you can imagine that at any point after knight to d5, knight takes d5, e takes d5, this pawn is loose. That's simple. And what Paul Keres did, he actually put the bishop here to be used as a tempo gain for Fischer. So now after knight d5, e d5, this bishop is attacked and this pawn is falling. And this is in fact a losing move. What he should have played after queen to e2 is simply f6. And now at any point if the knight jumps here, knight takes, and okay, the position is okay, he isn't losing e5. Let me just show you the line. Let's say knight to d5. Queen to b7 should be played. Of course, taking the knight is horrible, because after knight takes d5, e takes d5, the rook can't recapture this pawn. It's completely losing. If rook takes, then queen to e4 is winning, because it's double attacking the h7 pawn and the rook with check. So this wouldn't work, and white would have an okay position here after knight d5. Let's say if he takes, e takes d5, he would be okay, of course, if he doesn't blunder, but he would be better off after knight to d5 just playing queen to b7, getting away from the attack, and that's it. And reinforcing this square, getting ready to take, because now if knight takes, e takes, rook takes, queen to e4 doesn't really do much after g6, because the rook is defended. So that would work. However, after queen to e2, bishop to e6, this position is almost completely lost, and from now on Bobby Fischer hardly gave back any of his advantage. We have knight to d5, knight takes d5, e takes d5, attacking the bishop, and now after bishop takes d5, knight takes e5. And you can see the problem. The bishop is attacked twice, so if the knight moves, the bishop is loose. There's another problem. This diagonal is very weak. This diagonal is very weak. This rook and queen are very active. This knight is misplaced. This rook is out of the game, and black's back rank is weak. So now let's see how Bobby Fischer continued. First rook to a7 was played by Paul Keres, trying to reinforce the bishop and getting away from any discoveries. Bishop to f4, attacking the queen indirectly. Of course, now the queen will have to either move or do something else. So now queen to b6. Rook a to d1, getting all of his pieces into play. g6 was played by Paul Keres. Knight to g4, now threatening a lot of discovered checks. A lot of checks and a lot of problems on the dark squares, which are all weak. We have knight to c4, and this was in fact another losing move. And the way for Bobby Fischer to exploit this was to play knight to h6. Even though this move is okay, I can't really understand it from a human perspective, and this is just an engine line I'm going to show you. So king to f8. Bishop to c1, defending b2, and perhaps trying to play b3, bishop b2, c4, which is okay. And now after f6, queen to g4, queen to c6, this is just the engine line, and I don't see white's advantage. I mean, okay, white is definitely better, but what Bobby Fischer played seems better from a human perspective. He played bishop to h6, and now this is permanent problems for the black king, and the back rank is constantly weak, and there is in fact nothing Paul Keres can do about it. He plays bishop to e6. Trying to chase the knight away. But now bishop to b3 is played, attacking the knight. And now with bishop to g4, then simply bishop to c4 is winning. And here Paul Keres plays queen to b8, which is an absurd move. It doesn't really do anything. And now we have rook takes d8. And in this position, if queen takes d8, the position is completely losing. If bishop takes d8, the position is also lost. So let me first show you queen takes d8. So queen d8, bishop takes c4, bishop takes c4, and now knight to f6 check is the winning move, because the knight can't be taken, of course, because queen to e8 is checkmate, because queen to e8, rook takes e8 is checkmate because of this bishop. So the knight can't be taken. The best move is king to h8, and now queen to e5. And now look at all of this going on at black's king side, and this just can't be defended. The best move would be bishop to f8, and now bishop takes f8, queen takes f8, b3, just gaining a tempo on this bishop. Let's say bishop to e6, knight to d7 check, and this isn't winning the queen, this is winning the rook in fact, because queen g7, queen to b8, queen to g8, and queen takes a7. This is what happens this is almost forced if queen takes d8. So Paul Keres took with the bishop. After bishop takes d8, there's an even more beautiful continuation. Bishop c4, b takes c4, And now queen takes c4. And now, of course, the bishop is pinned. So if bishop c4, rook e8 is checkmate. So this is now just a pawn up, a beautiful move. After this, queen to d6 was played, trying to defend somehow, trying to get back into the position. We have queen to a4, of course, once again threatening checkmate. We have queen to e7, and this position is now just beautiful, the way how Bobby Fischer handled it. Knight to f6 check. Once again, the knight can't be taken, because if the knight is taken, queen to e8 checkmate. King to h8 is played. We have knight to d5 attacking the queen. Of course, the bishop is pinned, so the queen would fall if bishop takes. Queen d7. Queen to e4, of course, declining a queen trade. Once again, if bishop takes knight, gaining a piece, temporarily queen to e8 is checkmate, because queen e8, rook e8, checkmate. Queen to d6 was played. Knight to f4, attacking the bishop. If the bishop moves, once again, queen e8, checkmate. Rook to e7. And now there was a killer move that should have been played. And unfortunately, Bobby Fischer played bishop to g5, which is also, of course, completely winning. However, after rook to e7, the move bishop to f8 was just killing. And of course, you are going to win the rook, you are going to win the exchange, and you are going to win the position soon afterwards. So after bishop to f8, there would be nothing else for black to do. But after bishop to g5, we have rook to e8, a horrible move, bishop takes d8, grabbing the bishop, and just converting to a simply winning endgame, a pawn up, and it should have ended more beautifully with a tactical checkmate. However, this was okay as well. So we have rook takes d8, knight e6, queen e6, queen e6, f e6, rook e6, a pawn up, thanks very much, and of course a pawn up after Paul Keres regains one because he can. After this, one pawn is dropping off. And in this position, this is just a pawn up and an easy conversion. There's absolutely nothing black can do. So after rook b7, rook f6, king to g3, black resigned. And Bobby Fischer got his second win at the Curaçao Candidates. But this game was such an amazing display of chess principles and how the threat is stronger than the execution. And he was threatening checkmate in two different ways for the last 15 moves. I think that was brilliant. I think this is one of the most beautiful games ever played by Bobby Fischer. Okay, everybody, I hope you like this game from the Curaçao Candidates. Stay tuned for more chess. Thanks very much. Bye.